So we're going to talk about pressure curves. I want to tell you, this is one of the most misunderstood topics ever. Okay? I'm just going to lay down a few basics, and then we're going to, from that, we'll determine everything. Okay? Now, let's start with a new whiteboard. Oh, I want a new whiteboard. Clicked on the wrong thing. Great. I don't want it. Okay. So here we go. So the central topic about pressure curves has to deal with the relationship between the pen behavior, right, in terms of physical pressure, and then how it relates to logical pressure. That's the first thing you need to understand, okay? So the physical pressure, the pen understands this, and then by the time you get to the tablet and the PC, you get logical pressure, okay? What is physical pressure? Physical pressure is you take a scale and you measure things. Logical pressure is a number. You know, if you have 8,000 pressure levels, it's 0 to 8,000 something. You can also think of it as a number from 0 to 1, but probably for this video, we can just talk about a number from 0 to 100%, okay? We know that 0 means, you know, less than the IAF. 1% or 0.1% something means basically the IAF. And then 100% means the maximum physical pressure. But between that, it's kind of a weird thing, okay? Like we don't know, for example, if your pen has 300, if your maximum pressure is 300 and your IAF is 1, what's in the middle of 100, you know, what's in the middle? Like 150 gram force, okay? Does that mean that if I get a number, here, let me start another whiteboard here. So, if we have physical here, you have 0 gram force. I'm going to draw these up and down, okay? Because it'll make it easier for me. And the max is 150 gram force. And then I'm going to exaggerate its position, but 3 gram force, or better yet, we'll say it's 1 gram force. It makes the math a little easier to deal with. But the computer deals in logical numbers, percentages for now. So 0%. And then of course this is 100%. And we sort of know that the, you know, 0.001%, we know sort of that maps, right? So let's draw a line. We know that this goes to this, like we know that, okay? And we kind of know that these two are aligned. But the question is, this is a question, if there's the 50% mark, does it map to about 50% of this value? Meaning, roughly speaking, that would be, sorry, they shouldn't say 15 gram force or whatever. I mistakenly did something here. This should say 300, okay? 300 gram force. So, is this the case? Like half of this is half of that? And like, is this true? We know this is true on top. We know this is true on the bottom. Is this true? And by extension, are any other numbers sort of proportional? Does does the 75 point here match up the 75% point here? Right? Whatever 75 here is here. Is that true? But if we just answer the question for 150 and the middle here and the middle here, then we get our answer. And the truth is, we don't know. Or more probably, we do know, and the answer is it does not match. Okay? What, if you were pressing down, what would it take for you to get to 50% pressure of this pen? Typical EMR pen. Anyone want to guess? Now, some of you are probably thinking more. That's incorrect. It's actually less. What you'll find here is that to get to 50%, so let me write something here to make it even more clear. So this is this is kind of 100% physical, and this is 50% physical, right? And this is 0% physical, and this is, I'm going to say this is 0.0, whatever, some small value, right? So do the percents mass on each side? The answer is no. Where do they go? That's actually fascinating. In reality, it's like this. To get to 50%, you would have to press kind of, I would say, probably at 100 gram force. That matches to 50, right? And in fact, the 25% here, right? Where would you have to press here to get to 25%? Is it between 0 and 100 or 1 and 100? No, it's actually probably closer to, like, I'm making this up. It's probably closer to 20 gram force, right? So it's they're not linearly mapped, and you need to know that. And if you take a look at a typical EMR pen, you get a behavior like this. This is physical. This is logical. This is the pressure response, and they look like this. What this reveals to you is that I measured every EMR pen I've ever measured behaves very similar to this, okay? What this reveals to you is the interesting fact that EMR pens are, hang on a second, they're really hypersensitive toward the low end of physical pressure, close to the IAF, and they're kind of less sensitive over here, okay? This affects how this is the physical nature of the pen. You can't change it, right? You can't change the way the pen behaves, but you can change the way the computer thinks about it, okay? At the end of the day, the tablet's giving your computer numbers, and those numbers can be processed, okay? So this is, this diagram is called I call it a pressure response curve, okay? It is a curve. It's not the curve that you see in a driver, which we're going to get to, okay? This is a description of how a pen behaves. Not all pens, not even pens of the same model, a specific pen. You got to measure each pen if you want to find this out. You can't, and you have to get a scale to do it. You cannot do it by sight. You can't do it by touch. You have to get a scale to figure this out, okay? So, I don't bother doing it because it's not going to help you, and it's quite painful to do. Painful meaning it takes time and just you have to be very careful. But I've measured 70 something pens. They all basically behave like this. They are oversensitive toward the IF. They're less sensitive toward the top. And please, whatever you think I'm saying, I am not saying this is bad. It simply is the way the hardware behaves. There's nothing wrong with it. But knowing this fact will help you understand how to deal with it. And it brings us up to the topic of how to deal with all sorts of other things with pressure and pressure curves, okay? So pressure response curve is the pen's hardware pressure behavior. which cannot be changed. Like, it's a hardware thing, right? And you can't open your pen up, you'll probably destroy it. So the pen behaves one way. And let's go here and open, oh sorry, I want to open a new whiteboard. Okay. So think back to what's happening here, right? You've got the tablet, which is sending you logical pressure, percentage, right? It's 0 to 100%, but it's logical. You don't know how hard you're pressing, you just know, relatively speaking, you're pressing harder and less. So 50% logical pressure, unless you've carefully measured the pressure response of the pen, you don't know how hard it is. You just know it's more than 49, it's more than 10, and it's less than 60, right? So it's just relative. But don't worry, it'll all make sense. So your computer, I'm gonna go over here. This logical means this is logical, not like log. Your app is gonna take that and it's gonna draw, okay? How does it draw things? And I'll just write the code for you. Very simple version of the code. It takes the, I'm going to call it pressure value, P. And this is logical, so I'll put a little L there, PL, right? It takes that value and and the value is 0 to 0. Let's talk about it as if it's percents, or 0 to 1, right? It takes that percentage and it multiplies it by your brush size. Okay, that's how it figures out the final brush size, like the actual dynamic brush size. I'll call that. That's probably a better way of saying this. Oops, don't want that ruler. Dynamic brush size. Maybe I should say instantaneous brush size. It's the brush size that is live as you're drawing. Okay. Let's do the math and figure out how this works. Let's say your brush size is 100. This is easy math, okay? This is your pixel size for your brush. This is what you put in the UI, and you're pressing down with 30% pressure. Okay, that's what this is like the physical reality, or this is the logical number you're pressing down with, right? We don't know how hard it is. We just know it's this percentage. And we have 100 pixels. That's what the UI is configured to do. So at this moment, when you're pressing down at 30% pressure, this is very easy. It's 30% of 100, which is what? 30 pixels. Okay? That's how it all works. That's how logical pressure gets converted. Now, let me erase this. Remember, and so in this picture, you can't, this logical number is getting to the app, you can't change it. But that's where you get an opportunity. There are multiple places here, but I'll just talk about it as if there's one place. There's going to be this, this box, and this box is really about, I'm going to call it post-processing, pressure post-processing. Okay, and it is going to transform the numbers in some way. Okay, it can do any kind of thing. Now that's what I call this pressure post-processing. Now, there are several kinds of pressure post-processing. You were probably thinking this meant pressure curves. It doesn't. There's actually several kinds. There's actually something called pressure smoothing, which no one talks about. And there's pressure curves. Okay? So that's what a pressure curve is. It's transforming what you see in this data you're getting, this logical data, and you can make the pen behave differently. Okay, now some of you are probably wondering, how can you possibly do such a crazy thing? Give me a second and I will show you. Like, what's it actually behave like? Don't worry, I got you covered on this. Let me just make sure if I have my data here. I need to clone a repository to run this tool, so just hang on a second. Clone repo, and I need to get, what is it called? probably the visualizer. Let's clone that. And I need some data. You can't see what I'm doing. I apologize for that. But I'll show it to you in just a second. I'm just hiding the boring parts from you. Let's clone repository to data. Remember I told you I measured pens, right? So we're going to show you very clearly what I did and how this matters. Pressure. Yeah. Okay, I think that should do it. Let me open this in Finder. Go up. Okay. Perfect. I need to minimize this apparently. Okay. Okay, no comments yet. Okay. In the middle is the pressure response curve for a specific pen. Don't worry, we're going to show you other kinds of pens. This is the curve, okay? And what the curve is telling, it's mapping. On the bottom is input, sorry, and on the axis, the y-axis output. And mathematically, what this line means, going from bottom left to top right, it means do nothing. It's not affecting the pressure curve. It's not affecting the thing on the right. So the thing on the right is representing the actual hardware behavior, but this pressure curve is not changing the hardware behavior. Okay, and this pressure curve is what you'd see in a tablet driver UI or an application. So it's very important you understand this. The shape on the left, which is a pressure curve, which I call the pressure processing curve to distinguish it from the pressure response curve, it's not doing anything. Nothing. Okay? And give me a second. I need to move. Yeah, let me move down. There we go. People will sometimes see this in a driver and they'll say, "Oh, it's set to be linear." Well, the curve is set to be linear. The pen is not behaving in a linear way. It's behaving like you see on the right. Now, why would you change the pressure curve? And let's just see what happens when I go to the left or to the right. What happened there? Notice this. It got steeper. It got, what does that mean? That means it's become even more oversensitive at low pressure, okay? So generally speaking, you don't want to do this. Like, I don't know why people have got in their heads that they should do this. I can believe that for some pens you might need to, but I wouldn't recommend it as a general choice, okay? Because all it's doing is making pressure toward the lower end more uncontrollable, because you see it's spiking high very early, right? And the evidence of this, unfortunately I don't see the 50% mark, but look how fast I get to 50%. 50% is, actually I may have the number somewhere. Oh, I don't, okay. 50% here would be something like pressing, let me look at the note. Sorry, I'm trying to see that. Pressing at 25 gram force here, out of, what's the max? 600 will get me to 50. See how oversensitive that is? 25 gram force is not a lot, but the computer is saying, hey, that's 50% of maximum pressure, right? And I'll show you the effect of this. I will show you the effect, okay? Let's see what happens when you make a pressure curve like this. You see what happened there? It made it more actually linear, okay? And it made this not as steep at the bottom here. That means that it's going to be easier to control pressure there, okay? And by the way, all sorts of things can be done here with the pressure curve that do weird things, okay? And we'll talk about some of these, right? Weird things, you can do weird things, and they change the way your pen behaves drastically, okay? But this is the theory behind pressure curves, okay? You need to know that, otherwise what I'm gonna talk about with pressure curves is not gonna make any sense. You're gonna have a very mistaken idea of what they do and why they do it. So maybe when I make my final video, I'll be a little bit faster at this and simplify it. But this is important. The pressure processing curve, what you see is called pressure curve, is modifying how the pressure data is being transformed before it's applied. Okay? And just to, again, summarize the key point, one of the key findings, generally, you want to get a pressure curve. You want to start off with one and start going this way for until it feels right. Until it feels right. Okay? And we'll talk about that more. So, okay, let's start. Now that you know that, what should you do when you get a tablet and Krita and you want to just do the right thing for pressure? Okay? First, let's go and open up Clip. No, sorry. Let me open up Wacom. This is the Wacom Center. Okay? The first thing you should do when you want to work with pressure curves, let me move my face out of the way. Oops, not that. This. Okay. The first thing you should do is find out how the driver is configured. Okay? It's pretty simple. This is the Wacom UI. And let's click on, let's see if it has it here. Here it is. Here's the pressure curve. Okay? And they call it tip sensitivity. Okay? This is the pressure processing curve. This is how the driver is processing pressure. I would recommend you just, for now, you just leave this as exactly all the way to the left and just in this shape. Straight line, lower left, upper right, that's it. Just leave it there. What's it mean? Whoops. What's it mean? It means it's doing nothing. Right now, you don't want the driver to do anything. There are reasons why you want to affect the driver, but those are kind of other reasons that we will get to in this video. But right now we're focusing on what to do in an application, okay? And we're going to ignore eraser sensitivity. We want tip sensitivity in Wacom. Let's open up XP. I don't have an XP pen with me, do I? I don't have a pen is the problem. Okay, give me a second. I actually like the XP Pen UI a little bit better, and you'll see why. Actually, let me show you the Pro Pen. Let's see if it shows any different behavior here. Pro Pen 3. Do they show pressure? Yeah, they don't. Unfortunately, this Wacom UI is not great at this. Believe it or not. It doesn't show you what I need to show you, which is how pressure is actually changing. Okay. So give me a second, and let me get an XP Pen device, and I'll show you. Right back. Okay, I'm back with an XP, how was this called? XP Deco Pro Gen 2 MW. I believe that's its medium. And let me create some space. I got the pen, now I need a cable to connect this thing. Okay, should be connected. Let's get to XP Pen Tablet. Yeah, Deco Pro MW Gen 2. Okay. So, what you need to know here is, let's see if it's mapped correctly. Oops, I got to map. Okay, I need to map it. It's not on the right screen. Give me a second. I'm going to define the work area. I want it to go to the right. So screen, I want to the secondary screen, and force proportion, right? Okay. I'm going to click on the pen. Okay. So what's the driver pressure curve look like? It's linear, right? It's all the way to the left and top right, and it's linear. Okay. And so that's good. We're going to start there, but I want to show you one more thing before we go into the applications for Krita. Okay. So this is what's useful at the XP Pen UI, and I wish Wacom did this. They actually have this gauge at the bottom right here, okay? Now it says 0 because the pen is not touching the tablet. Okay, the pen is hovering, nothing happens. Now what happens when I touch it? Okay? Okay, now the numbers are changing pretty fast. Okay, now, by the way, there's something that you should know about the way it works on macOS. I think on macOS you have to not, what's the right word? You may have to move the pen or change something about it, but it looks, maybe not. Anyway, let me try to test it. Test means let me just try to talk to you about what I'm doing here. I'm gonna press as hard as I can. Okay, and I get to, that's the max pressure, right? It's easiest again to think about this as percentages. So the max number is 16,383. And I'm pressing down to, and it says 16,383. That's 100% physical pressure, or 100% logical pressure. Now, it's pretty, I want you to see how unsteady the gauge is, okay? Well, I'm pressing down super hard, and the gauge is super steady because it's locked at 100. I'm probably pressing 3 times harder than the maximum physical pressure. So, of course, it's going to be steady at 100%. Let's try being steady at just like 90, 95%, okay? I can kind of do it. I can kind of hold it there, right? I'm pretty good at that. See how little it's moving? Let's try like 80%. I suppose this is 80%. I wish they showed a percentage. It's a little harder. You can probably see me dance a little bit more, right? I'm trying to hold steady. Let's try holding it steady at 50%. What do you notice? It's actually hard. It's not hard, but it's like, it's dancing. You get my feeling? It's dancing. Let's try 20%, 25% logical pressure. It's hard. Okay, I have to try really hard, and then what about 10% logical pressure? I'm just guessing based on the... What do you notice? Some interesting things there, right? You notice how I'm hitting 0 a lot. I'm actually going even under the IAF. It is super hard to do. In fact, I seem incapable of giving you just 1 or 2 pixels of this gauge, right? Like I'm trying to get as light pressure as I can, but I can't get it like below 200. I mean, it might show there for a second, but like I can't hold it at anything less than that. And the thing is dancing. You can see the numbers are dancing, right? Like once I get to like 600 or something, I can kind of keep it there. I mean dancing, but like below that, it's just jumping. That is an example of the hypersensitivity of these pens. Okay. And again, this is, if you just think about what you're seeing here, even though you're seeing logical pressure, you're seeing the effect of that standard hardware behavior of these pens. Every pen I've ever tested is like this. I don't like to say they're hypersensitive exactly at low pressure, they're overreactive. The slightest change in physical pressure will make it dance all around. I will try to build a web UI to show you this, that shows you like how wildly it's dancing. Because this is not a good UI to see it. Okay, so you got to keep that overreaction in mind. It's hard, and it's also now, we've also noticed one thing. In general, it's really hard to hold a specific pressure value. But it gets easier as you get toward 100% pressure. Rain says, can you put in the opposite curve that you recommend? And I want to see how it reacts. Okay, now Rain, before I do that, there's one thing we have to make sure I am not sure this pressure curve UI could be implemented to either show you the raw behavior that's unprocessed, or it might take into account the pressure curve, okay? So we got to keep that in mind. We can discover it pretty easily. So let's do exactly what Rain said. Let's do this, okay? So this is theoretically should, help minimize this effect. You know what? I really don't like what XPPen did here. This rendering is not good. It's very misleading, actually. Maybe this is correct on the top right, but it's not correct on the bottom left. That should go down lower visually to match what's supposed to happen. They may have had a reason. Okay, now watch this. By the way, oops, wrong pen. So now I'm going to try the same test, okay? So we'll see immediately. I'm going to press at low pressure, see what happens. Okay. Basically, it's the same thing. In other words, this pressure curve, this pressure gauge, is not taking into account the curve. It isn't, okay? And I know that because I am really telling it to be super unreactive to pressure. But it's not, oops, sorry, I clicked on the wrong thing. There we go. I'm telling it to be super unreactive, and it's still very reactive. Very reactive, okay? Like it's hard to hold pressure. So I don't think it's paying attention to what I'm telling it. Now it could be, it is, let's see. Let me try to flip it and see if it's having an effect. Because maybe I'm not doing it. Now if this is having an effect, it should jump up real high. And it isn't. This should cause it to go crazy up high, okay? And it's not doing that. It's basically, okay, so this is not being affected. What you're seeing here is the actual sort of hardware of the pen. This is for like in this thing here, wrong pen. This curve here is how this information is going to be processed and sent to the computer. Okay, does that answer your question, Rain? So that's why it's dangerous. I kind of wish it's actually a good, let me note this down actually, that's a really good, let me get my notes here. I want to note this down. So I'll talk to the I'll send an email to the XPPen support team and say, hey, I have some suggestions. Let's see, let me create my show notes. I forgot to do that. Upcoming. Okay, what is today? 2025 09 22. Oops, I'm typing, but nothing's typing. What? I must be. Oh gosh, I'm so silly. I'm typing on the wrong computer. Okay, no worries. Hang on. Sorry. Let me just write this down. 2025 09 22. And what I wanted to note is two things. XPPen, lower left, pressure curve is incorrectly rendered, I think. Also, I'm going to suggest I'm going to suggest that they add a feature. Add feature to show how curve, meaning curve affects the gauge. Okay? Oh, also add the percentage. Gauge percentage. Actually, you know what? I even have an idea of how to make their UI better. Maybe I'll live code that at the end of this, or toward the end of the stream. So we can actually show you live, we can build a tool that will demonstrate this. Okay, I got that note. Terrific. Okay, so first rule, first thing I suggest for people is to make sure, oops, sorry, I accidentally clicked on something. Make sure this thing is flat and it's, you know, at the left end to the upper right hand straight line, like that, okay? So, leave that alone for now. We're gonna talk about the application, okay? Now, I'm gonna simultaneously address Clip Studio Paint and Krita, okay? You gotta remember that. So, let's find Krita first. Krita's coming up. Let's close these things. I'm going to continue using the XP Pen tablet, by the way. Okay, Krita started in the wrong. Okay, so I'll just start a new document. Okay. The first thing you need to do with Krita is you have to. Krita has a pressure curve. You know what? Let me show the whiteboard. That's probably an even better idea. Let me close this. Where is the whiteboard? It's in my edge. Okay, hang on. Okay, so let's just write this down so everyone knows this. Okay, so basically pressure processing curves sorry, my writing is, oh, it's not my writing, it's also due to this whiteboarding app. They're in three places, three potential places, okay? Number one, they're in the driver. We just took a look at that. Okay, and what do we say we want to get? Make it just like this. Make it a linear curve. Now, they can also be in the brush. Each brush can have a pressure curve, okay? And we'll explore that in a minute. But they also, apps can have a pressure curve, okay? There are different philosophies about which one to use, but basically, for now, I would say leave the driver linear, leave the app linear, and work in the brush, right? Do whatever, do something. But that's where we should play. But you got to make sure these are set to just the null pressure curve is what I call it, okay? So let's go to Krita. Where's Krita? Krita. Did I not just start it? Oh, I must have closed it or something. No. Okay, let's get a new image. Okay, so what we want to show you is where is the application pressure curve in Krita. I gotta remember this myself. It's not there. It might be different on Windows versus Mac, but let's see if I can figure it out. On Mac, I'm gonna look at Krita preferences here. Yeah, okay, so it'll start off usually at general, and you want to scroll all the way down to tablet settings. Okay? And this is the same UI mostly. There's a little difference on Windows, but it won't matter for what I'm talking about. And you want to just make sure the same thing is true. You want this to be lower left, and then you want this to be upper right. Okay? That's it. You don't need to do anything else. Just make sure it's linear. Excuse me, let me just... Okay. Now, you got to find the pressure curve for your brush. Now, before you ever, this is, I guess, if I'd recommend before you use a brush, verify what its pressure curve is set to, because it may surprise you. Right now, I am set, so I'm on Ink 3 Fineliner, okay? And for a long time, I think this is true. How do we find the pressure curve for this? You go here. I clicked on that little this weird thing, which brings up the brush editor. Okay. And then let's just take. There's all sorts of things you can modify. Source, painting mode, blah blah blah. But the one you want to concern with right now is flow. Okay. And nothing is checked here except size. So we're gonna, let's just click on size. Okay. So the size is look, it says two things determine size: speed and pressure. Now, aren't you surprised that speed affects the width of the brush? I was. Okay. So I don't want speed to affect the size of the brush. So uncheck that. Okay. And then let's see how pressure. Surprise, surprise. The Ink 2 Fineliner, for years I thought if I set 5 pixels, it was always 5 pixels. But look, and let me just reset this so you see. I'll just do the default setting, right? I turn off speed again since I reset it. Okay. The default is this pressure curve, and it's not clear what this does yet, but it's clearly not. It's not what we've seen before. And by the way, I'm not suggesting changing it. Okay, I am not. Okay, but what does this tell you is that at some level, pressure is changing the size of your brush, just barely. Okay, and why this shape is interesting, well, we can talk about. But this thing is doing something. Let's try another brush. Sorry, I keep on clicking on the same brush. I want to try. Let's try this ink. What is this called? Let's, okay, it's at its default setting. So here for size, rotation is affecting the size. I don't want that for now, right? The reason I don't want it is not it's a bad thing. It's going to interfere with me showing you things. That's why I don't want to show it to you. And then you want to see how size is being affected, and its size is being affected by pressure. It's linear, okay? So it's good. So this is a good starting point to talk about what the pressure curves do. You know how to do it, right? Now, what the right pressure curve is, I'll show you, but you need to see it happening. Let's just make sure we know how to find it, okay? So we're good here. We're good here. Nothing else is affecting the size. Great. Okay. Now let's go to Clip Studio and do the same exact thing. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to check on the performance of something. For those we probably have at least one more person who just joined the chat. Let me copy this link. This is a video I published just about 2 hours ago on recommended Android dung tablets. I just want to make sure people know about it. Okay. So now where's Clip Studio Paint? Let's start it up. Okay, now it's started. Okay, you see it? Let's get a new document. It sounded like I said, let's get a nude document. I did not mean that. I meant let's get a new document. What the heck? Oh, it popped up the dialog on the other window. Here we go. Okay. So Clip Studio Paint has a very similar thing as well. I can't actually remember where the settings are. Oh, here it is. It's under the main menu, pen pressure settings. And what do you want to do here? Now, the Clip Studio Paint does something really weird. This UI says adjust pen pressure. This is the application setting for pen pressure. And it doesn't show you anything. You have to click on this show pen pressure graph. Okay? Now, depending on how you launch Clip Studio Paint, it's, let me reset it to default, right? Let's try to modify it somehow. You can drag on it. Let's just do this. Oops. The Clip Studio Paint lets you add nodes. Drivers don't let you do this, but you can make some weird ass shapes. So again, you want to check here. Let me bring it back up. So you want to check, go to, where is it again? Pen pressure settings. And, usually this is unchecked. You want to check it, and you want to verify nothing crazy is going on, okay? You just want to, if it's like that, you got problems. Sometimes when you start Clip Studio Paint, it'll ask you to do something with pen pressure, and like when it says check adjusted settings, I clicked on it. It says draw with the pen again and check the adjusted pressure settings. So I'm gonna do what it says. Man, I can't move my. Oh, I'm using the wrong mouse or the wrong pen. Okay. So I'm drawing as it says, and I said okay, I'm done. And this is really strange UI. I don't like it. It closed when I said I was done. Let's go back there and see what it did. It didn't seem to do anything useful. Anyway, the key thing is reset it to default, make sure it's linear, confirm it by making sure show pen pressure graph, and then you're good. Okay, that's the application. And then now, let's pick a brush. Let's pick, I want to paint a pen or a marker. I want a pen. Let's take G Pen, one of my favorites, okay? So with Clip Studio Paint, it's gonna be the tool details thing. Let me see if I can find it. Subtool details, I think it's called. It should be here. Now, Clip Studio Paint has some really advanced, and I really like the UI. Let's try to figure out, so here it says brush size. And you'll click here to find some settings, okay? And it popped up on the other window, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to do this. Hang on. Can't I resize this? That's so silly. The thing, the UI it's showing me is popping up on another monitor, so I have to figure out how to show it here. Maybe I'll move it over. Still popping up on the wrong place. Give me a second. I will try to figure this out. Clip Studio. Tool settings. Opening on main monitor. Let's say there's a way to quickly change that. Okay, they say drag it over and it'll remember. So we'll try. Drag it over. I certainly cannot drag it, I'll tell you that. Where's my mouse? Okay, that was wild. Let's try the other way. Okay, man. Have a good sleep, a single rainbow skittle. Okay. I'm going to click the, what do you call it? The wrench icon, and now it brings it up where I can drag it in here. Okay. So we're going to click on brush size here. And what you want to do is click here. And it's going to bring it. Oh gosh, that was so dumb. I am going to have to change which is the main display. Otherwise, it's going to show this nonsense. Okay, hang on. Apologize for that. And it's going to be very frustrating if I don't do this. I want this to be the main display. Right? So let me move this thing over. Now maybe the thing will do the correct thing. Yay! Okay, so a little inconvenient, but it does work. So if I go back to brush size here, and I click here, you'll see brush size dynamics, pen pressure settings, and it's linear. That's fantastic. And it has tilt settings. We're going to ignore this curve. This is for tilt. But the key thing is the tilt is affecting the brush. Hey, Hera. Glad to see you join us. So I don't know if this is default settings. Let's verify that. I'm going to go to G Pen and I'm going to click on this brush. Reset all settings to default. Okay? That way we'll see what Clip Studio does normally. Click here. Okay. So this is the default setting for affecting brush size for the G Pen brush. Tilt is affecting it. If you want to control your brush width, minimize the number of things that are affecting it, you know, unless, or at least know what's affecting it. So I'm going to turn off this tilt affecting it, okay? Pen pressure is linear. That's good. That's good, okay? This is where you want to start playing around with things, okay? And Clip Studio Paint also lets you create nodes here. So you can make this any shape. And there's reasons for doing this, right? And we'll talk about those reasons. But for now, I'm going to set it, I'm going to reset this brush. And here's the simulation. Look how weird it'll do, okay? I'm going to reset this brush back to its default settings. And we're going to address the very first point I made about how the pens behave, okay? So all the pressure curves now are linear, meaning they're not affecting how the hardware of the pen behaves. And I'm going to draw with this brush, this G Pen, and I'm going to draw 100 pixel. Actually, just to make sure you see it, I'll make it maybe a little bigger. I should just type the number in. 200. Let's see. 200 should do it. Why not 300? So here's max 300. Okay. Is this the right thing? Sorry. I got to find the right pen. Ah, I found it. Okay. So what you're going to see is me drawing with on the Move Ink with the Pro Pen 3, which is the best pen on the market, with the, you know, the best brand on the market. You've seen me draw before, and you know that I can do it correctly. Like I'm not, you know, having problems creating straight, you know, lines. But let's see, and let me turn off stabilization, because stabilization will affect pressure. Turn off all this processing. Watch what happens when I draw with very little pressure. Okay, now the line's position is changing, but you notice anything else? Just take a look at the width of the line. It's kind of weird looking, right? Again, forget whether there is pressure or not. Think about what it looks like. Is this a smooth line? Is like this is. I'm drawing with more pressure, right? Even then, what do you see? You see a little bit of bumpiness. Again, I mean, there's bumpiness in movement, but there's also bumpiness in just the pressure. What about when I'm pressing really heavy? There's actually less bumpiness, right? It's blobby, that's the right word. There we go. Maximum pressure. Of course, there's no blobbiness there because I'm pushing beyond max pressure, so it's going to be stuck at 100 perfectly, right? Sausage lines, yeah. Look, And some people would say, oh, this is terrible. It looks awful. And and this may be even an effect that you want, but this blobbiness comes up all the time, okay? I'm going to show you how to deal with it. You can probably guess. Let's verify the very same, let's do the same test with the XP pen, okay? Different pens have different kind of overreactions to at low pressure, okay? Let's see what happens to XP pen. Am I in the wrong, here, hang on. The XP pen suddenly became non-reactive. Okay, why was that? Maybe it's because the driver is on? Could that be a reason? That's weird. I can't seem to draw with the XP pen suddenly. Strange. Okay, let me just try unplug and replug. That's how you solve problems, right? Unplug and replug. Okay, somehow I have it back. It's just running on the other monitor, so we'll fix that. Monitor. There we go. That may have been the actual problem. It may have been clicking on the other screen. I just didn't notice it. Okay, I'm gonna move this out of the way if I can. Okay. Now I'm drawing with the XP pen. Very light pressure. I'm not getting any. Oh, there we go. What do you notice here? I'm drawing real light pressure. Right? And it actually, it's a little less blobby than the Wacom. Isn't that interesting? Again, don't worry about going left and right. That is an effect of something else. That's me just being not sliding the pen around. It's about how light I can draw, and then there's a little bit of blobbiness. But the meta point here, it's hard to control the pressure when it's small, when you're close to the IAF. Okay? And the effect of that is the pressure value is jumping. We saw that. Let me go back to the XP Pen UI. Yeah, you're right, Hera. It's much smoother, but higher IF. And I can tell you later in the video what XP Pen I think is doing. Okay? Let's go here to the pen. And let's just take a look here. Look how hard it is for me to maintain. It's bouncing, right? At really light pressure, like I can just barely. I can't reliably keep it in the hundreds, right? It'll bounce through, it'll go through that range, but basically it just almost immediately goes to 200. It's overreacting. And again, you weren't here when we mentioned what this gauge is, Hera. This is the actual pen's hardware behavior, and the pressure processing curve on the upper left is not affecting it. Okay, so unfortunately, it's hard to see the effect of the curve in the UI. I'm going to actually make a suggestion to XP Pen and everyone else. You should do this because it will help people understand. Okay, so this is why I like using the CP913 for line art sometimes. It's like changing the pressure curve without having to. That's a really great point. That's actually a great point. So, you know, CP913 is, in a sense, it's a pen with some deficiency at low IAF. It doesn't have as low IAF. But sometimes that's useful not to have a low IF. And we're going to show you how to get that effect. Okay? Now, I'm going to do one more app, and you know which app I'm going to show you. You know. If you hang around this channel, you know what app I'm going to show you. Okay? How do I get this thing to... I love how Clips UI is like Windows in the middle of Mac. It's so funny. Let me bring up... Where's Chrome? My favorite tool... Not my favorite, but I use it for testing. Because we need to show you this in multiple ways, right? And watch again. This is... I'm going to do it with the Wacom because it's going to be a little easier to demonstrate. I'm drawing with light pressure, and pressure is set to change the size of the stroke. Pretty blobby, huh? It's pretty blobby. Now, some of you, let's see, drivers should implement the same preview that CSP has because it's more intuitive to see pressure that way. You mean the brush pressure curve, Hera? Or, oh yeah, you mean the stroke preview. Is that what you mean? Like how they show the stroke changing? We'll touch back on that in a minute. Right, so what I want to show you here is, again, a little bit of blobbiness. Now this blobbiness is what I call pressure wobble. And it's actually due to the extreme sensitivity of the pen near the IF and overreaction. It's also due to the texture of the tablet. Actually, pen displays tend to have less because they're not as heavily textured as pen tablets, screenless tablets. Also, I believe that your hand is, it's really hard physically for a human to maintain totally, hang at pressure at extremely one value. So your hand will it'll kind of bounce, almost like a shock absorber. The pen and the nib, the spring in there is kind of like a shock absorber, right? Like you're pressing and it resists and you bounce back and forth. And so I think that's also creating some of these blobs. It's sort of a systemic effect. And it all contributes to this weird blobbiness at low pressure. Okay? So how do you solve that blobbiness? There's actually two methods. And I'm going to show you one of them in this thing. You could turn on the pressure curve, and you want a pressure curve like this, right? And let me hide this again. You see, it's just less blobby, right? It's just less blobby. Now you're seeing it look a little blobby here, and that's only because of my rendering. I'm rendering like 1/100th of a pixel, and so it's rendering almost like I'm not drawing a pixel. So I'll press a little bit harder, but there's really no actual blobbiness going on here. Okay, so that's another illustration of how pressure curve can just help. And that's why most of the time I recommend people use this kind of pressure curve, because it softens, as I showed you. I'm going to show, Hera wasn't here for this, so I'm going to show that again. I have a little simulator app. Where is it? Did I open up an edge? No, hang on a second, I'll find it. I have a little simulator app, Hera. And yeah, it's this thing. So let me reset. So on the right is the measurement of an actual pen. And then here is the pressure processing curve. This linear shape means do nothing. So it's not changing the behavior of the pen. But if we move it here, you're seeing it's getting less reactive. The overall shape is more linear and it's getting less reactive at that lower end. So that's why I generally recommend doing this to some degree. You'll have to just experiment to see what feels right for you. And then your strokes will just get more controlled. Okay? So let's get back to, this is, I think I've shown this on stream before. So that's one problem that you have to be able to solve with. By the way, this one on the right, that's a real pen. That's actually my measurements. All those dots, actual measurements I made. But there's lots of samples there. And I have 74 different measurements, meaning 74 different pens I've measured in this way. Okay, so that's the first thing you should do with your pressure curve in a brush. I'd recommend you curve it like that. Okay, or I think for whatever you see on screen, right? Make it bend down and to the right. That will generally help you. Okay, that's the first thing you got to do. And just so that we're totally clear, let's go ahead and do that in the apps. Okay, so let me find, where's Clip? Clip, where are you? Where's that darn window? bring all to front. Hello, clip. There we go. Let's clear this out. Let's do it again. You go to the brush. You can click it here, or you can go to the wrench icon, but you want to click under brush size. And I would say again, get rid of things that are affecting the size that you don't know how to control it. So I'm going to disable tilt. This is linear, so I'm going to just drag in the middle. It'll add a point. Okay? It'll add you can see the point there? It added that little blue point. Now, if you click again, it's going to do something funny. You're going to screw it up. Okay? But don't worry. Don't worry. If you click again and you don't want that, you hold the point. Click and hold. Just move it out, and let go outside, right? So even if I add 4 things, I can be like, oh, I don't want you. I'll just move it out, and it'll just disappear. I'm not even letting, you see? It's kind of straining against, and it just goes again. Okay? That's it. That's how it goes. Even this one, I can just click, boom, right? So just drag outside the window, and you'll see the effect. Now, that's the first thing. Okay, let's talk about, oh, we didn't do Krita. We didn't do Krita. So let's just show you Krita as well. Where's Krita? I'm going to drag it over. So we're on the Ink 4 pen rough. And pressure curve is this, and it's very similar, right? You can just click, and you can get nodes, right? And you can get some crazy effects. I'm not saying they're useful. We can talk about them. There's kind of a simulation here, but to be honest, I don't like the simulation because it's kind of this stroke, this preview up here is kind of synthetic, meaning it'll give you some idea what's happening when you actually draw, but an actual brushstroke with a human hand produces different data points, and it doesn't look like this. So this will give you a false impression of how it feels to draw with the pen. How can I say this? Yeah, I want to get rid of the point. Just pick one and then drag it out, just like with Clip Studio Paint, right? And if it's screwed up, just drag all the points out. You're back to linear, or you can collect the presets. Now this is something I don't think Clip Studio has. It doesn't have presets, right? Okay. Now, so it's set to, this one's set to linear by default, but it actually has one of these set up for you, right? So you can just click that. And this is even just clicking the default bent down one, I should really give this a name, is better than the alternative of not knowing what your pens do. Make pressure work for you. That's the goal of pressure curves, right? They can help you create effects, but more importantly, they can make your pen behave. And that's the problem. Pens aren't behaving right. They're out of control. Yeah, that auto pressure curve option, I think you're talking about the application pressure curve, Hera. If you're not, let me know. And earlier before you joined, I talked about that and I said, hey, we should make sure that's just linear because it just was a mess. I think I've encountered it a couple of times and, it just interferes with my life. Okay, so that's the first thing you can do with the pressure curve, and you need to do it. I'm not saying you need to make your pressure curves look like crazy, like this, right? Sometimes it's useful, but I am saying this. I'm trying to think. Oh, that was right here. Okay, good. I'm gonna say something rude, okay? And one day, and this is a rude thing to say, but it's just a funny way of saying it too. You use the application, I'm banishing you to the shadow realm. What are you talking about? Okay, I can see why. There are some useful things about it, right? But I prefer to do it by brush when I'm really tweaking the behavior because you have this intuitive notion how certain brushes should behave, right? Okay, let me give you my rude story. I'm giving you this rude story because it's supposed to motivate you to do better. Okay, here, Ukaru says, the crazy part about pressure curves is that there is the driver one, the general one for the pro. Yes, and the brush specific one. Yes, we covered that earlier. I'm sorry, Hera. I apologize. I'm not going to banish you to the shadow realm. The crazy part about pressure curve, yeah, It is crazy, and you have to know. Oh, I should have said this. I'm so glad you mentioned this, Ukera. This is so important to know this. It's so important. Let me bring this thing up here, okay? What a terrific point. Okay? So, as Ukero points out, there is a pressure curve in the driver. There's a pressure curve in the app. And there can be. Not all apps have this. Not all apps have brush pressure curves, but in sort of like the most complex case, this is true. Okay? We're going to just label these A, B, and C for a second, okay? And we'll just draw a weird curve here and a weird curve here and a weird curve here, okay? Now the question is, you got used to it from using standalones. Okay. Okay. Oh, it's because you don't have the driver pressure curve. I can see that. I think that's the reason. Okay, so the question is, which curve is applied? Isn't that an interesting question? And the answer is all of them. If you ever watched the movie Leon, the Professional, there's a scene where Gary Oldman tells somebody, call everyone, and like bring the other police, bring all the other police, everybody. And the guy's question, he's like, you want me to call everybody? And Gary Oldman, who's not looking at the guy, turns around, he goes, yeah. He goes, get everyone. He goes, and you want everyone? He turns around and goes, everyone. Okay? So every one of these is being applied, one after the other. Driver pressure curve is being applied, then application pressure curve is applied, and then the brush pressure curve is applied. And before you ask, that's not a theory. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's how it actually happens. And how do I know this? I have tested it. Okay? I have tested it. Okay? And I'll just tell you how you can test it. Do the following. Let's erase this. I still have to tell that rude story, by the way. Here's how to test this. Let me create a new whiteboard here for this, okay? I'll just do it with 2 of these. Try it in your app. Seriously, try this. For your... let's say you have the driver, right? Pressure curve. Set it to something crazy like this. Okay? And we'll leave your app like this for a second, okay? Or your brush, okay? Leave the app alone. And the net behavior will be this, okay? And you'll know it in your stroke, right? That's interesting, Ukero, because actually, we should cover the different philosophies of why some people use last resort versus first resort. I would love to hear the reason, actually. But try this to prove the fact that both these are applied. Clearly, so they kind of add up in a kind of mathematical way. Let me erase this for a second. And I'm going to do it like this. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Whoa, what happened? Okay, that was weird. So this is the driver. This is the brush. Right? And this is sort of the net result. Okay? So everyone's on the same page. If this is null and this is null, this will be null. Okay? If this, on the other hand, is set to this, or let me draw it differently, draw it like this, then this has no effect, so the net effect is, where's the eraser here? There we go. The net effect will be like this. Okay? And you'll notice that as you draw. What I want you to do is this in your app. And what do you think the net behavior is? Since they're both applied and they're doing opposite things, they essentially give you back a linear curve. Okay? And the reason I illustrate this, thank you, Ukero, for bringing up this topic, is that just by looking at one of the pressure curves, you may have a completely incorrect understanding about what's actually being done to your pressure. You look at this brush and you're like, yep, it must be behaving. No, the driver or the application is also being applied, and they can make your pressure curve do wild things. Same happens to the driver. If you take a look at this, you got to check your app pressure curve and your brush pressure curve, otherwise you don't know what's happening. So all three are being applied. That's why I tell everyone, start off by making sure everything is nulled out, right? Just linear, okay? Does that make sense? Later on we'll get into why somebody should use driver versus brush versus the application, okay? I have my philosophies and reasons, but let's get back to, we solved problem number one, right? We solved the problem of pens getting overreactive. So that's the number one thing I think you should do, okay? That's the number one thing. It'll just generally help. You don't have to make it all the way crazy, right? A crazy pressure curve, but a light, just play around with it until it feels good for your brush. Okay, and right now I'd recommend doing it per brush because you have different expectations with different brushes. Yeah, try it out, okay? Try it out. I have yet to find a case when the application one is like they don't override. They all apply, which makes sense. It's kind of like the simplest thing to do, right? In other words, the application doesn't know a pressure curve is being applied by the driver, so it just got to do its own pressure curve, right? That's just how the code works. And likewise, the driver doesn't know that the application has a pressure curve. I think for applications like Clip, Paint, and Krita, they should probably tell the user in their pressure curve UI, hey, there's another pressure curve in the application that might be affecting it, and you should, actually I'm going to give that a suggestion. Give me a second. I'm going to write this down in my notes here, because I think it is actually important to note this. Oops, I raised my volume up super high. One second, let me take this as a note. So I would say apps pressure curve UI should tell users that other curves are being applied. In fact, if you're in the brush UI, it should, especially if the pressure curve in the app, the global app pressure curve, if it's anything other than linear, it should tell you, hey, there's another pressure curve messing around with you, right? Or show that to you. Warn if app pressure curve is nonlinear. See, Rain says, something weird about CSP and Moving Pad is the default pressure curve in the program is not linear. Really? Interesting. I'd have to check that out. Ukera, funnily enough, I only realized there was a main app pressure curve when I started using Rebel. And actually, something very similar happened to me. I only realized it very recently that Krita and CSP had their own pressure curves for the app. I'd seen the UI and I'd never really thought about what happens when both are set. And I didn't even know a CSP had one actually, right? I didn't know that it pops up a message the first time you install about pressure curves, but I didn't know it was doing anything. And the UI is confusing as well, right? Okay, I took that note down. Okay, so we solved one problem. Let's solve another problem. And for this, I'm gonna use Clip. By the way, I love Clip Studio Paint. Seriously, I love Clip Studio Paint. So, let's draw with Clip. Okay, let's see. Now, I want to ask you a question. Do the strokes look good? They do, right? By the way, this is the XP Deco Pro MW, FYI. Strokes look good, don't they? Don't you like them? And what's our pressure curve? Let's just make sure. It's set to, oops, I did it the hard way. Yeah, it's linear, right? We still have that problem at low pressure. We're going to leave the low pressure problem alone for a second, okay? Because I want to talk problem by problem, okay? Actually, let me use the... for this lesson, I don't need to use the moving. I'm going to use the XP pen. Doesn't matter, both demonstrate this equally. But take a look at these strokes. What do you notice? Right? I'm starting at low pressure and then kind of flicking the pen off a little bit. Let's tell you what to notice here. It's nothing crazy. There's nothing crazy to be noticed here. But I just want to point out something. And it's not a problem. It's not an error. It's just, this is the reality. Take a look. Let's zoom in on the ends. What do you notice here? Real fine tip, right? It's very sharp. These strokes will cut you, right? And we all know why this is. As you flick off the pen, you're letting off on the pen, and so the pressure value is getting back down to 0. So it's just going to draw, right? Yeah, Hera, I think you're right. Some of these differences are just brush curves. Absolutely. So this is some, and you may not like this. You may not like, this, and there's multiple reasons that these happen, honestly, but you may not like them at the end. And let's just take a look at the beginning. Oops, I keep doing that. Sometimes you get a blunt. You get a blunt. Sometimes you get a blunt beginning to a stroke because I hit it with kind of a lot of force. But if you're starting very light, you'll also get these little sharp little things here, right? You notice that sometimes more or less sharp, and you might even see it like it looks like a little, little thing poking out. It's natural. It happens all the time. This is more of a sharp one. This is a blunt one. Okay, here's a real sharp one. Now, what is causing that effect? What is causing that effect? That it's actually because you're pressing with very low pressure. Now, the XP pen has an IEF of something like 3 gram force, okay? Which is okay. Oh, it's good. It's good. Okay. Now we're gonna try with the moving. Let me move the XP pen out of the way. Oops. Cables are in weird places here. Okay, let's get this. I want the XP pen out of the way so I can use the moving. There we go. Okay, and now I'm going to use the best pen on the market. Okay. Let's see what it does. This is the Pro Pen 3. Again, we're talking about a very light stroke. Different pens have slightly different reactions to things. Okay, let's zoom in. At the ending, we definitely see some of those things, don't we? Those sharp points, that happens. At the beginning, we do see sometimes it happens. Sometimes, again, I was hitting the glass pretty hard, so it's more blunt. Sometimes even a bit bubbly, right? Even a blot there somehow. But, different pens behave slightly differently. But this effect of the sharp points is often because the IF is really low. In fact, some pens can have low IF, and you may see it kind of get stringy, right? You may see it get like shoelacy, and there are multiple reasons why you might get a little bit of a string, but let's just deal with the sharp points. How can we eliminate the sharp points? Now, apps actually have different ways of doing this, right? But a good way of doing it is dealing with pressure curves, using pressure curves, okay? And let's explain the theory. So for that, I'm going to go to the whiteboard. By the way, is everyone enjoying this this stream? Is it interesting? Because I'm having a lot of fun sort of talking about this topic. I will tell you that. Okay, so what am I talking about? So this is going to take a little bit of thinking here. So I'm going to draw 0% logical pressure here and 100% logical pressure here. When I say logical, this is the pressure value, right? That the pressure processing curves work on. My favorite brushes for line art are the turnip pen and real G pen. Use the real G pen, or the real G pen. I am just I use a Milli pen, actually. Because I do essentially like web comic art, I guess. Like I'm drawing Apus and Pepes and Apustalias. Okay, so now we want to figure out, sorry, I gotta undo this. So this is the input pressure coming in, right? Ukera says, I love brush customization, so I enjoy this kind of talk. Perfect. So this is the input pressure, meaning input to the pressure curve, okay? And then here's the output. Now I'm drawing it differently. I'm drawing it because when you see it X to Y, it can be confusing, okay? So we're gonna see if this makes more sense. Okay, 100%. Okay, so when something is linear, the mapping is 1-to-1, okay? And that means that when you see that go that line like this, or to you it's like this, it means that every number on the left is mapped to the number on the right exactly. In other words, 100% is 100%, 50% is 50%, right? So it's all the lines are parallel, okay? There's no transformation going on, okay? That is what a null pressure curve, meaning this, does, okay? That's the net effect of that shape. Now, so again, this is the output. Did I write the word output? Output, okay? That's what this shape is. Now let's try something a little different. We're going to what I call restricting the output range, okay? What we want, I'm just going to draw the effect from 0 basically and 100, and you'll get the idea. We're going to map, sorry, how can I say this? We can do something else. We can, instead of going from 0 to 100% on the output, we can restrict the range. Now we can restrict it like this, meaning, this isn't actually 0, it's more like this 0.0001, right? This will become, let's say, 10%. And 100% will become, I don't know, 80%. Okay? So basically, the pressure curves can tell, they can transform the pressure and move it into a narrower curve. Okay? Now, what does a pressure curve like that look like? It would look like this. We start off like this, right? It would actually look like, let me undo that, this. Okay? I know, it's weird to think about the math behind it. So that's why I wanted to pick, this kind of, here the lines are not parallel, okay? You're taking this range and constraining it into a smaller range. You can just do the low end of pressure or the high end or both. In this case, both is. But this is useful. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening here. Okay. When you do this shape here, right? When you transform this value right above 0 into 10, what's that do? This actually has, remember, you can't change the IAF of the hardware, but you can process the data to effectively give you increased IAF. That's actually what happens if you do this. Likewise, lowering this decreases max pressure, the max physical pressure, right? In effect. So let's put this through to practice. Remember, oh, sorry, one more thing. Put all this together. Let's say you have a brush of size, let's say 100 pixel brush, right? So this 100 pixel brush is it's never receiving a value of 5% now. It can't because of the pressure processing curve, right? it'll only ever receive values of 80%, between 80% and 10%. What does that mean? Your brush size will only be between 80 pixels and 10 pixels. You see how this works, right? And of course, this can change. If it's 200 pixels, this number will be 160 pixels, and this will be 20 pixels, okay? So this is how the ends of the range contribute to the brush size range, okay? And here, of course, I'm talking about brush size, but it applies to also transparency, but it's easiest to visualize this as brush size. So that's what any pressure curve that looks, so let's just make sure we're drawing some really big so you can see what I'm talking about. So this is the null pressure curve, which is this. But any pressure curve that does this, if it raises, if this point is still at the edge, but it's raised up, that is an increase in IAF, effectively, right? And then this one like this is sorry, I made a mistake here. I made a slight mistake. I have been used. Sorry, I made a mistake. Okay, I'm saying the wrong words when I meant to do that. I'm drawing. In other words, I'm sorry. I'm drawing the wrong thing. Okay, I'm drawing the wrong thing. Let me try to. I'm talking about increasing the IF. Let me go back. I made a mistake in my explanations. I got carried. I'm mixing up two concepts. Okay, so this is not actually changing the IF. Okay, I will show you how to do that in a second, but this is not changing the IF. It's just changing the output range. Okay, so I apologize that I said increasing the max, decreasing the max. Like, we're going to get to that, but for some reason my brain just had a confusion. Okay, all this is changing what the logical pressure is going to do. So in other words, in the old way, the very lightest pressure would give you 0.001%. That'll give you 10. Okay, still light pressure applies, and the maximum pressure is still exactly at the same place. Okay, there's a different way of doing that. So we'll get there. We'll get there. Now that sorry, I apologize for that. That was just a silly mistake on my part. Okay, where was I? Okay, so this is not increasing the IAF. It's effectively it'll make the beginning of strokes thicker. That's the actual effect. Likewise, this will mean max. So this will mean thinner strokes. Okay? I mean, they won't get as thick as the number would indicate. Okay? And likewise, you can combine them like this, right? In other words, you can make your brush pixel size may be set to 100 pixels or 200. You can constrain the size really carefully, right? You can say, even though I want my brush size to be 100 pixels, but I don't want it to go from 0 to 100 or 1 to 100. I want to stay toward 90 to 100. How do you express that? And you would do it with a curve like this. Your brush size will be like, I don't know, between 80 and 100 now. Okay? That's what these do. And let's test that theory. Okay? So we'll test the lower end first of the output, and then we'll deal with the upper end. And again, I apologize for calling this an IF change. That was just a weird... so you can get confusing to talk about pressure because you're always looking at these charts. Okay, let's get back to Clip Studio. And let's show you this in practice because I want you to believe. I want you to trust and believe. Okay. There we go. We get it like this. Okay, and let me delete that. And Adam West, thank you for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so I'm going to go here. This is the real and verify the pen pressure curve here. It's linear. Okay, so that means I should get, right? And there's thickness, or the max thickness, and you see, right? I get the, and sometimes you don't want to vary all the time. How can we fix that? Let's start with, we're getting those sharp edges, right? You see it? We're getting real sharp. Maybe I don't want that. You can fix that. Or you can change it. I'm going to change the output to, just to keep it easy. Notice, by the way, notice the preview. Okay, let's see how sharp. See the preview. See how sharp it is. Oops, I dragged in a. Okay. Watch what happens as I move it up. Right. So sorry. There, and then more. Right. You'll actually get thicker ends, because it's you're telling the brush, hey, I'm pressing down. It doesn't know that you're physically pressing down light. You're actually fooling it. You're telling it, hey, I'm pressing down at like 50% pressure. You're just barely touching the surface, right? Now, let's go ahead and close this. Okay, now it's 100 pixel thing, so it's pretty thick. So you have to adjust your brush size. Oh, it's 300. Okay, so let's go back to 100 or something like it. Yeah. Let me type it in. Delete. No matter what, see what's happening there? Now probably I dragged that a little too much. Like if you drag it to be flat like this, let's go put it all the way at the top. If you drag it like that, what you're telling is, I am maxing out the pressure every time. So it's just being flat. No variance. And maybe that's the kind of art you want to make. You can get this by either turning off pressure or by setting it in the pressure curve to go max. Okay? I think, Hera, the thing about changing the minimum sizes, you know exactly what the size is going to be, right? So I wouldn't call this like, you shouldn't use it's really hard to use a pressure curve to say, okay, here's the exact minimum size I want. It's just an easy way of making, a little bit of those sharp ends disappear. If you want a specific minimum size, that's probably an easy way to do it. But this is an alternative, right? And you can combine it with other effects as well, right? But they're both useful even together, by the way. They're both useful even together. Let me go back to this. Sorry, let me close this. Let me go back to this. I want to try slightly better. That doesn't go quite as high. And you'll see, you don't need to go that high to make this difference happen. There we go. You see it? Let's go and delete everything. So now I'm pressing, and there's still some variation, right? There's still some variation. I can get a little bit thinner, right? But it still gets thicker, and it gets there. Let's delete again. Let's try just drawing the strokes again. And you can see exactly what happens. Zoom in here. See? You can see that it just blunted it out, because as far as the pen is thinking, or the app rather, it's like, hey, this person is just drawing, he's pressing down hard, right? He doesn't know what you're doing, right? So if you want to get rid of those ends, this is a good way of doing it, okay? Okay, so let's try the other case, right? Where you just want to make sure it's 100%, or you want a line to be around 100 pixels, but no more. But you don't want it to be completely 100%, but you don't want too much variance, just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay, let's do this here. You move this up real high. I'm going to move it up to about 75%, and let's just see what it looks like. I'm having to press a little bit hard to get my changes. There's probably too little variation going on. Let's try maybe more like this. And the reason I can't predict the exact outcome is because of the physical pressure response. There we go. So here I'm pressing very light and I'm getting some variation, but not too much. So if you're doing artwork where you need your strokes to vary but not crazy, and you're using a big brush, then really using a pressure curve to restrict where these things fall is a really good idea. Now, we'll get to the next important and interesting thing. You remember, let me do this in Krita, just so everyone asks about Krita and Clip Studio. We'll do the same exact thing, okay? I'm going to increase the output to increase the output range, the lower bound of the output range. And this is not a great brush to show this. Let me increase the size to be, well, that's a little crazy looking, isn't it? But you see, we don't get those sharp ends anymore, right? We definitely don't get the sharp ends. Okay, so this may be something you should explore doing. And let me do the other one as well, which is we want to restrict it really close to, we want to give some variation, but not too much, right? So consider it. I think you're really going to, this actually clarified to me how the pressure axis works in numbers. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad. Thank you for that comment. Okay. So we talked about, again, these kind of pressure curves where you're moving the endpoints up and down. That's called changing the output range. Okay. Moving the Y values of the pressure endpoints. Okay. Restricting the output range will restrict or it will also restrict the thickness of your strokes. So you get to really control how the strokes are working, okay? And I always advise when you're drawing with, some of you have been drawing with Krita for years, and after this stream, you should take a look at the brushes you've been using, or maybe even haven't been using, and see the weird things they're doing. Because sometimes they're working for you, and sometimes they might be working against you. But even if they are working perfectly, I'd like you to know what the app is doing, right? Because it might help you if you're trying to get the same feel with another brush. Okay? Okay, now, let me go back to the whiteboard. And we're gonna do another interesting, oops, let me undo that. I want black. Okay. So, for now, first I talked to you that this does nothing. Then I talked to you and I said that this will control some of the overreactive nature of pens at low pressure. Okay? And then I said that this will constrain the output range, okay? Probably this is not a typical thing you do with the output range. Probably more typical is this, right? Now, you don't have to pick and choose. These can both be applied. You can combine these, okay? And these combine in the way you visually, actually. Oops, let's go back to black pen. You can actually create a pressure curve which fixes both problems simultaneously. It would look like this. You see what I'm getting at? You've solved the overreaction, and also you get the effect of restricting the pressure range, right? So this is something you should think. You probably need it less when you're doing this kind of like 90% to 100% deal. But I just wanted you to see that this is, you can combine the effects. So more reasonably, it would probably look like this. For those of you who want to solve that little sharp endpoints problem, it would look more like this. right? Just raise it up. Just raise it up. Okay, so we've solved now 2 problems in one with the pressure curve. Now, this requires that your pressure curve can draw something like this. Driver pressure curves usually don't let you change the output range, which is probably makes sense because people will screw it up. Okay, one more trick. I'm not saying this makes any sense, but if you realize this, it'll just help you. It'll cement the idea of how pressure curves work in your apps. How do you change the size of your brush? Well, in the app, you change the size of the brush. You can use pressure curves to change the size of your brush. I'm not saying it's useful, but just understanding this helps you realize what pressure curves do. So let's suppose your brush is like, it's 100 pixels. If you set your pressure curve to this, which you can do, that means no matter how hard you press, you'll only get to 50% pressure, which means you'll only get to 50% of 100 pixels, which is 50 pixels, right? You see the mathematical logic of that, okay? Not useful. Not useful. This is they would call a degenerate case, right? But actually I will say this, some people for some reason have occasionally asked, I just want to set the pressure to 100%. I want it to always be as if I'm pressing, and this is one way to do it. Now in an artistic application, I could tell you this makes no sense, right? Of course not. You have a brush size. If you really wanted to do this, how would you do it? You would actually set to 100 pixels or 50 pixels, right? And if your brush had pressure sensitivity, you would just turn pressure sensitivity off, right? Sorry, turn off pressure sensitivity, right? That's another technique you can do. Just turn it off, okay? And then your pixel size of the brush will be exactly. Now, where is this actually interesting? Okay, so yeah, I was wrong before. Artistically, an art app, you don't need to know this. But guess what? Some apps don't have pressure curves at all. Here's a perfect example. The app I'm using, which is Microsoft Whiteboard, Microsoft OneNote. Lots of note-taking apps that respond to pressure have no way of controlling the pressure, but they are sensitive to it because they want your strokes to look pretty, right? Some people are driven crazy by that, okay? So in an artistic way, what you would have to do, since there's no pressure curve in the app, you would go and you would set in the driver, if you could, right? You would change the pressure curve to be like this. Now, unfortunately, drivers cannot do that, right? But that's what you would do. Open Tablet Driver can do this, if with the right plugin, I'm sure. But no driver app. We can show it to you actually. Let's bring in XP Pen driver here. So it's an understandable request actually. It's just there's no way to do it. Like I can't drag that point up at all, right? It's always, and it's typically can do this, which we're going to talk about in just a second. And you can do this, but you cannot bring these up or down. Okay? There we go. Now we're going to talk about just what I said, which is this. What the heck does that, what does that mean? That also is an interesting thing. So, okay. So, what we just covered was changing the output range. Now, we're going to cover changing the input range, which is weird. We've probably never really considered what that means. So let's go ahead and just go back to the null pressure curve and just take a look at what it means. It is mapping the full input range to the full output range linearly, right? Meaning it's not transforming the data at all, okay? Input to output linear. This is what it looks like. Now, we changed the output range before, meaning we've moved the points up and down, but what if left and right? What happens there? What does that mean? What's the interpretation? What does this mean? Yeah, sorry. What does this mean? What does also this mean? Head scratching, okay? This means, effectively, increase IAF. And this means, up here, right? This means decrease max pressure. And there are useful reasons why you would do this, okay? Let me say it like this. Let's talk about the increased IAF. Why would you ever want to do this? Because it seems illogical. Everybody's telling you lower IAF is better, lower IAF is better. And Wacom's pens have the lowest IAF in the industry, and I rave about how excellent it is. The question we have to ask ourselves is lower and lower IAF always good for you? And the answer is twofold. Number one, you want the hardware to have the lowest IAF possible. But like everything in the world, there are consequences, right? There are consequences to low IAF. Strokes can have artifacts and pens can behave weirdly, okay? So low IAF, sometimes you actually want a higher IAF, okay? And I'll show you the exact reasons. Okay, let's show you the reason. Actually, I can't show it to you because these pens don't have the problem. Some people will drop their pen. I caught it, but imagine it drops. And what can happen is it messes up the pen. There's some delicate pressure stuff in there, and not every time. It's never happened to me, but sometimes even I've had a pen for a little while get kind of out of whack. And you ever notice some pens draw while you're hovering, which is awful. It's like they're clicking or drawing as you're not even touching the tablet. And what's happening is it's reporting pressure even when there is no pressure, right? Think about it this way. Your pen, this pen can report pressure, it can detect pressure of like less than 1 gram force. What if it detected pressure of 0.0000001 gram force? You'd think that'd be awesome, right? However, that can be a problem. Because if that's true, then the pressure, it would report pressure while you are moving it through air. Like if you were near the tablet and it could detect a microscopic amount of pressure change, it would detect you moving it through the air. And that would mean you were drawing while you're hovering, not even touching the tablet. That would be, of course, irritating, right? So that's actually a sort of like an explanation of why super low IAF can induce problems. And you can, if you detect your pen is hovering, you can just move the IAF up, okay? And I'll just show it to you how to do it in Krita and Clip Studio Paint, because I want you to know. Now you can't do it in the driver, and I can see why. It would really cause too many support headaches for brands, tablet brands. So let's go ahead and just go there, and we'll go back here to the settings. Now, how do you increase the IAF? You go here. Now, that's it. Now, what's this? This actually has a name. The gap between the lower left corner. Oh, you're not seeing it. Sorry. I'm in Krita now. Okay. The gap between the lower left. So this is going and moving it over. So now the IF is going to be bigger, or larger. This gap between this point and this point is called a pressure dead zone, meaning effectively you're ignoring that lower end of physical pressure, just like whatever, not paying attention to it. And so you have to press down harder to draw, and you can't visually see it, but I just want to show you a couple of things. First of all, the output range hasn't changed, so I'm still drawing very small strokes, right? But I'm having to press a little harder to get there, okay? Now this might be useful because sometimes, we often say it's hard to press down hard requires force, but also when you're trying to draw at super low pressure, you have to put some effort into it. Like, remember the pen weighs like, I don't know, 13 gram force is the amount of force. If you could hang the pen in air, it would be like 13 gram force, right? So you have to produce to draw with the lowest IF for this Pro Pen 3, you have to produce 12 gram force in this direction, up. So you're pulling the pen up, okay? That itself is work, okay? That is work. And you're having to do it at low pressure. That's, trust me, I have tried to do this so often that, measuring, that it's straining for me actually to hold the pen really light, okay? And so sometimes I actually increase the IF because I don't have to pay that much attention. I can be sloppy, but I'll still get really light strokes, right? So you don't have to always think, oh, I have to draw really light. That's the only way I can get light strokes, little tiny. No. You can actually increase the IF, and actually that gives you more. We saw that earlier. It's easier for the human hand to deal with a little bit more pressure, right? So I'm not saying you will enjoy everyone will enjoy the experience, right? But as long as you're in control of it, there's a valid reason for increasing the IF, okay? And another reason, actually, Hera inspired me, because she said sometimes she uses the CP913 pen, which has a higher IF than the Pro Pen 2 and Pro Pen 3. Well, if Hera wanted to, she could actually increase the IF of the brush, and at least while she's using that pen. Now the problem is, of course, the apps don't know which pen you're using, right? So she'd have to commit to using just the Pro Pen 2. It totally makes sense that she switches to the CP913 because she doesn't have to tell the app anything. She can switch the IF just by switching pens, right? So just play around with it actually. Play around with the dead zone and see if you feel like you're struggling, like you're having to be too careful with the pressure, increase the IF, right? It's a little bit counterintuitive because technically it's like we love low IF, but you can see again, it doesn't mean I can't draw super thin strokes, right? It just means I have to press a little bit harder, and that might be useful for me, okay? And again, it might fix problems where pens are reporting pressure and they, while hovering, right? One more thing I just want to show you. I need to get another pen. Ukera, one thing that comes to mind, this can be very useful is doing shading, fine shading. Yeah, it might be. It absolutely might be. I would recommend all people just try different things with pressure curves and see, but you should develop a sense of why they do the things they do, right? I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna show you something else about this increased IF, but I need a special pen to show this to you. I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. And I showed you how to increase the IF in Krita. Let me just make sure people see it in clip. Have I told you how many times? Have I told you lately I love Clip Studio Paint? I am absolutely in love with it. Okay. So we'll set it back to normal. And yeah, you can move it. Can you move it? Oh, wow, you can't. You cannot drag. Can I simulate it? I might be able to. Well, not exactly. Yeah, you can kind of. Sorry, you can't move in clip anyway. You cannot. I'm glad I did this. You can't just drag that thing over. You can move it up, but you can't move it to the right. In Krita, you can move it to the right, and you can't move. Can't move that to the left. You can drag it down. That's not what we want. You can simulate it though by adding a node here and dragging it down. So that's giving us a what do you call it? It's giving the curve, which is not intended here, though it's not bad to have a curve. So I added another point, right? See this other point? I'm just going to drag that down, and this essentially gives the same effect. Okay, so I can increase the IF in this brush with Clip Studio Paint. Just took a little bit of thinking about drawing the curve correctly with the nodes. Let's try the opposite. Oh, sorry. I'm going to show you the other way this is done. So for that, I need to get into the Wacom Center. Where is it? Okay, I have it somewhere. Let me move this out of the way. And this out of the way. And this out of the way. Where's Wacom Center? Okay, I don't know why it's not showing up here. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to touch this pen, this Move Ink pad or Move Ink with the Pro Pen 3. Oh, Pro Pen 2. Sorry. Now, I'm going to click Default to make sure it's all to its default settings and open up Advanced. Okay. And take a look at the pressure curve here. Looks linear, right? Looks like actually it's not. Do you notice that there's a dotted line there? And if you pay real close attention, it's actually a little bit over that dot. This where this point is. I don't know about this one. Let's ignore that. It's actually. In fact, you can prove that. Let me set it again to default. Actually, let me make sure it's the default. Okay. You saw me drag it to the right, and if I hit default, it's not actually all the way over to the left either. It's a little bit over to the right. In fact, to prove it, I'll move it over to the left. And you can see there's no white pixels to the left of the blue line. So let's get back to this. What that means is, for the Pro Pen 3, there's actually a little bit of what they call pressure dead zone. That's what that name is when you have a gap there. What we find is the Pro Pen 3 is the hardware is so sensitive, some Pro Pen 3 models actually will draw while hovering sometimes. I have two of those that actually do that. So Wacom implemented a dead zone here, and this stops that problem. Now, I'd recommend you actually try moving it over if you have a Pro Pen 2. Move it over. And Huion also has this dead zone for some of their pens. Move it over to the left. If it doesn't give you problems, try it. Okay, so check where this thing ends up. Remember, you can increase the IAF, but you cannot decrease it beyond the natural hardware limit of the pen. Okay, you can't. However, if your tablet came with a dead zone there, you can at least remove the dead zone. So that's the other reason why you need to notice this. Okay. Okay. Now and this is Pro Pen 2. With Pro Pen 3, which I'll bring up here. Let's go to Pro Pen 3. Okay, I'll go to Advanced. I'm going to go ahead and hit Default. Now, there looks to be no pressure dead zone. I actually believe the pressure, I would suspect the pressure dead zone is actually implemented. They just don't show it to you because people might be confused. Okay? So, I could be wrong. They could have just fixed that problem with the pen, reporting pressure. But yeah, at least visually, the pressure dead zone is not there. So the exact reason why is unknown. Okay, now on to the upper. We're going to work on this thing. That That's reducing the maximum pressure, okay? And let's go ahead and we'll talk about it. But first let me show you how to do it in clip. Where is clip? Hello, clip. Oh, sometimes I just don't know how macOS does things. Okay, here we go. So we'll go back here, and then I'm gonna just drag those nodes out. So this is going to decrease the maximum pressure. Oops, I drew a line. Oh, I can't do it. So I have to draw nodes again, okay? Okay. That decreases the maximum pressure. Remember, you don't know how much it decreases it, but it will decrease it. And the same is true for Krita. Let me get to Krita. Okay, Krita. Okay, drag the node out. Oh, I can't delete that node. Oh, there has to be one node there. Okay, so you can drag it. You can just drag it over Krita. Okay, that will decrease the maximum pressure. And this is another one of those things you can do in the driver as well. Why would you ever decrease the maximum pressure? Well, some people, they want to get to the full brush size, and they just don't have the physical strength. I know it sounds a bit odd, but you know, some of these pens have really high max pressures, physical pressure. Pro Pen 3 can be like 900 gram force. That's almost 2 pounds. And that's a lot to be pushing down on, the tablet with, right? Some people have pain in their hands. They just don't have the strength for whatever reason. They may suffer with, issues with their hands. So for them, reducing the max pressure would let them get to the 100%, okay? And you don't know what this change is gonna do. I have it in my simulator. I'll just sort of show it to you. And you don't know how it's gonna affect the pen, but I'll show it to you in my simulator, which is that, let me hide these apps here and find, it should be, is it here? Nope. Okay, so I'll find the simulator, wherever it is. Okay, there we go. So again, this is the actual pressure behavior of a pen. You see where the max pressure, it's that last node, and the IAF is somewhere here. I'm glad I built the simulator. This is actually coming in pretty handy. Ukaru, let's see what Ukaru says. So you would need less physical pressure to hit the max brush size. Exactly right, exactly right, okay? Now, this is my pressure curve simulation, right? On the right's the actual behavior of a pen that I measured. It's actually, I think, a Pro Pen 3. But that's what a real pen looks like in terms of if you start measuring it with a scale. Now let's just try, I believe I have it. Yeah, here we go, look at that. You see how see what it's doing? It means for all this range of physical pressure, but I had to really drag it over beyond 50% before, and this means that if I press between 0 and like a 100 gram force, it's gonna think I'm pressing with no pressure, right? And then let me move this back. This pen has a max physical pressure of 600 gram force. This specific pen, if I move the pressure curve, let's say to 50%, now it's gone down to 100. So you notice something weird, right? Like the amount you move here is not, you'd be surprised how little or how much it affects the pen. In other words, I moved it to 50, for max pressure, I moved it to 50%, and it went down from 600 to like what? Whatever this value is, like 81. That's a huge shift, okay? In order to get it just to from 600 to 500, what do I have to do? I have to shift it, which is, just like a small amount. Okay, sorry. There we go. So a little tiny change, a little, just moving a few pixels, shoved the max pressure down to what? About 500. I lost from 600 to 500 with just a few pixels. Okay, so you don't need to go wild with this thing. And in fact, if I just go a little bit more, you know, this is probably not even a tenth of the way over. It's dropped down now to like 400 pixels. Sorry, 400%, 400 gram force, right? So you don't need to go hog wild with the max pressure. Don't do that, because a typical pen will, at least this Pro pen, right, will have kind of a weird reaction to it. It's going to overreact to it. And then let's try the bottom part. Let's see what happens. And what's interesting here is, and let me reset the endpoints. If I move this over, it's kind of the opposite things happen. I have to drag it all the way over to 50% on the bottom to make, you know, just about, let's just say, a small percentage change. I went from 0, so out of 600, it went from 0 or, you know, 3 gram force to 70, roughly, right? So here, you might be surprised. You may have to really change it much more than you'd expect, because moving it by a little pixel doesn't affect much, okay? You'd have to kind of, so that dead zone is very small in the Wacom driver, so it's not really affecting that much, but it is affecting something, okay? So just be aware of that. Be aware of that, that change. You may have to move this more than you might expect, okay? Okay, I'm gonna go get my Red Bull. Good question, Ukero. Let's answer that question. And I'm glad you asked, because I have the data to talk about it. Rain says, I suppose if you were to move this over the curve to... yeah. And so let's show you that, Rain. Let's show you exactly what you're... So this won't help the... moving it won't help with the hypersensitivity, okay? You have to curve it to change the, see? Now it's less hypersensitive, right? It's really crazy hypersensitive this way, but it's less hypersensitive this way. The endpoints don't change that. It's the curve that affects the hypersensitivity. And we'll, okay? Let's answer Ukero, because he's asking, is this specific pen, or let's take a look. And I have the data to talk about it. Let me get back to Finder and pick up some data. I have data for you. I love having data. Where is Finder? Oh, here it is. Hang on. I'm gonna have to move this over to the window or to the other monitor to get the data, and then I'm gonna drag it over. So it's easier if I move it over. Okay, there. So I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna pick the CP913. Okay, I'm gonna drag, watch this. Woohoo! CP913. Let's pick all my Pro Pen 2s. Okay, that's two, this doesn't look good when I have so many things here, right? But so let me instead reset this, a lesson for me. Let me put all the Pro Pen 2s in here. Okay, and there's some wild ones in there. In fact, one of them is like defective, and its maximum pressure is like 3,000. So let me remove it because it looks crazy by doing this, and then actually, let me find out which one that was again. It was this, it was 004, I believe, yeah. So let's take a look at all my Pro Pen 2s, except for 004. Here's 3 of them. And then here's the other 3. Now the Pro Pen 2 is slightly, how can I say, they are very tightly clustered. So this actually has a very similar effect to all of them, but they differ a little bit, right? But overall, you can see the effect is, because the pens themselves are very consistent, right? Now notice, if I just do this, it's much more obvious. One of these has a crazy high maximum pressure. So let's see how I can fix, what would it take to fix that one versus the other ones? It's a little bit hard to see because it's so crowded in here. Which one is that? It's 2, number 2. Let's drag that one specifically over. Okay, so there's the black one is another pen, a standard pen. What would it take to really lower that pressure? Just have to move it a little bit. And then now the max pressure is more like around 500, right? I should change this tool to make it more obvious. Yeah, and what's funny is you'd really have to move the max pressure over. Actually, but not that much, right? I'll try to redraw this maybe, or fix the tool so it shows you how it would take to fix the 300 or the 3000. By the way, I don't actually know that's the max pressure. I quit at 3,500 gram force because, which I think was reading like 80 something, maybe 90, because after that, like my testing equipment was like breaking apart. So, and I was really scared to press down with a pen. It wouldn't surprise me if it was like 5,000 gram force or something in reality. And that's probably going to break the pen if I really press that hard. But too high max pressure, physical pressure, can be corrected. And that's what I wanted to show you. Now, okay. And what else can I show you about pen pressure? We did that. Oh, I want to show you. Yes. There is something I do want to show you, which is kind of important. Let me reset this out. The Pro Pen 2s have really wide pressure range. It is, isn't it? It's kind of, it's interesting how much it affects. Let's try the opposite end of the scale and talk about the Wacom 1 pen, the CP913. Because they don't have, one of these has the black one is a sample data, okay? The rest are, but they don't have high maximum pressures really. They're kind of okay. They're in the okay range. A couple of them are in the good range. Now, let's see if this changes. It's still, I think, you don't need, I think a little bit is going a long way, right? Yeah, they're all affected. Basically, you're just more affected if the max pressure is higher. They're all very strongly affected relative to their max pressure. They're all strongly affected, right? They all went into about half, just going this distance, right? So it's super strong effect, okay? Now there's one more thing I want to talk about, because you can't have a conversation about pressure curves without explaining. We talked about the problems they solve, but you have to also be cognizant about the issues that what makes them effective and what can make them ineffective. Okay, so pressure processing curves, as I call them, they are really effective when you have a wide enough pressure range to play with. Okay, let's go back and let me be clear about this. See this curve, right? And I said if your pens are overreacting, that you can do this and it'll help the pen, okay? It'll help the pen. And you can see the black, which is my reference Pro Pen 3, how much it affected the pen, right? It really made it very flat almost, okay? But let us, so ignore the black stroke. We're just gonna pick one of these, let's just find out which one to, actually, let me pick the CP923 pen because it really exhibits these issues more, okay? The CP923 pen has a very, has an okay pressure range, but look how overreactive it is at the low end of physical pressure, right? To get to 50% logical pressure, I have to press something like 28 gram force. And so pressure curves get less effective at solving the overreactivity if the pressure range is tight. Okay, and we'll show you how this works. Let's find another pen which is not great. The Samsung S Pens are, which I like, by the way, they're just not great. They're okay. Let's reset these again and drag in the S Pen data. Okay, again, notice how they go up very steeply, right? And this curve can make them worse, but like it can make them better, but they're still very overreactive. You see that? Now, if I really made the curve more extreme, it might help, but like my point is, if they, oh fuck, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm so sorry. Here we go. Let me just reset this. So I apologize. I forgot I was looking at you. Let me drag in the Pro Pen 3 data again. Sorry, the Samsung S Pen data. All of these are see how steep these are here? They're all very overreactive. And what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna change the curvature to make them less reactive. And really, notice at least this curve did not have that big an effect on their overreactivity. It helped a little bit, but whereas it almost flattened the pen in black, the Samsung S Pens they didn't address them that much, right? So this is one of the reasons why you want a pen with a greater pressure range, because it gives you space to play, and your pressure curves can actually be, at least when you're doing this, can be more effective, okay? Now, having said that, this UI doesn't let me really change the pressure curve, right? But at the very least, we can imply that if I were to really change the pressure curve, I could probably do better. But let's think about that for a second. And I just want to draw a picture to sort of show you this. Just to tell you, like, you know, let's get here and I'll get a new whiteboard. So this is going to be not a pressure curve. This is the response curve, meaning physical to logical, okay? So let's draw it. So this, let's just say this is like 900 gram force, which is the biggest max pressure I have is 0 gram force. This is 0% logical. Oops, sorry. How do I scroll this? Okay, there we go. And then 100% pressure, okay? A Wacom Pro Pen starts off basically here and ends like up here, okay? But a Samsung S Pen and the Wacom CP923, they start here, but they kind of end up here, right? Meaning this width is about let's say 250 gram force, which is okay. It's not crazy. But the tighter this range is, the more problems you'll have controlling pressure, and pressure curves get increasing. And the lower that smaller that range is, the less pressure curves can help you, okay? And let's verify this. If you have Clip Studio Paint or Krita in front of you, we're gonna try an experiment to show you why low pressure range is bad, okay? So let's go over there. And it takes, remember, it's difficult to do this because we know that the max pressure range is not very sensitive when you move it over. It's not sensitive to UI changes. So, but let's try. Let's try. What I'd like you to do is find a brush in Clip Studio Paint and just move this sucker like here, right? Like make it like that, okay? Like intolerably close, okay? And then try drawing with really light pressure and just see what happens. I'm gonna try it right now. You see it? You see what's happening? A low pressure range, a low physical pressure range, it messes with you. Ukero, I'll get to pressure levels in a second. Good question, good question. So I'm simulating a very low physical pressure range, meaning a small, narrow physical pressure range. And it is super hard for me to get to 100. Like, I can't control the pressure at all. And this is with 8,000 pressure levels. Pressure levels don't matter. The problem is, it's such a narrow pressure range. I'm just hitting 0 and 100. I'm just bouncing all over it. And it creates some really bad lines, okay? And just to help you understand, let me, actually, you know what? I have a really great idea. I'm going to make this flat, okay? And it's back to normal. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to simulate the driver, so to speak, by going into the setting, oops, not there, into preferences. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm gonna make it really bad, okay? Remember, this is really decreasing the maximum pressure, okay? Maybe a little bit more, actually, okay? So I'm simulating, in a sense, I'm pretending I've got a physical pen, which just sucks, okay? And look at how bad that is, right? It's blobby, right? And you're thinking, hey, 7 Pens taught me how to use a pressure curve. So you go to the brush pressure curve, you go, let's fix this problem by doing this, okay? And let's add another curve here just to make it even more, okay? That's a pretty good curve for the brush. Will it solve the problem? Well, no, it didn't. It changed the problem a little bit, but actually it's still not fun to draw with this thing. It's kind of less blobby, but from at light pressure, the blobs come back. What's the point of all this? It is in your best interest to have a pen with a wide enough pressure curve. This is a little bit of a crazy case. I probably made the pressure curve of this pen like 100 gram force or something, effectively. But you can see the net effect, right? Pressure curves can't save you if your pen doesn't have enough pressure range to work with. So pressure range is like a resource. If it has too much, meaning too high maximum pressure, it's okay. You can always change it. But if it's too little, the physical pressure range that's natively supported by the hardware, you can't fix that problem, right? Even the pressure curves are going to struggle. So it's always in your interest to have a wide pressure range. Okay, so I think we covered probably every topic about pressure curves for Krita and clip sheet paint. That's kind of a basic. Let me see. Yeah, I think those. I mean, there's some weird tricks you can do with pressure, but I think this covers quite a bit of it. Okay, let's see if we can answer Ukeru's question now. How does this relate to normally advertised pressure levels? Pressure levels, it's completely independent of that, Ukeru. Completely independent. The truth is that, and I talk about this all the time, you only need about 2,000 pressure levels, okay? And when I say you only need, I'm saying really I think someone even who was trying to would have a hard time constructing a situation. Like they could do it, but it'd be super constructed to show that having 4,000 made a difference, okay? Pressure levels have nothing to do with the physical behavior of the pen. They're not even calculated by the pen. The pen just is giving you physical pressure, and it's being chopped up into smaller pieces by the tablet firmware, okay? And so pressure levels just mean how many small pieces do you get. 10 pressure, oh, you know what? I can show this to you. 10 pressure levels, too little. 8,000, you'll never see it. 2,000 is all you need. 16,000, it's nonsense. It's just nonsense. Every pen on the market for years has had more pressure levels than a person needs, okay? So people shouldn't even use it as a... What's an exaggeration? I'll try to think of an exaggeration. Yeah, okay, I'll give you an exaggeration just to help you give it an analogy. Cars, I don't know, Honda Civic can go from 0 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour, okay? It can go 10 miles an hour. Honda Civic can probably go 10.1 miles an hour, okay? And 10.2, so, right? So if you're going 100 miles an hour and you can go in increments of 10, now you can go 1,000 different speeds, okay? What if I were to tell you, if you paid an extra $50,000, I would unlock the ability to go you could go to not only just 10.1 miles an hour, but 10.101 miles an hour. You could probably believe that going 10.1 is different from going 10.13, but could you tell the difference between 10.1 and 10.132? right? Like with an extra little more divisions, would that help? It wouldn't. Now, by the way, maybe in reality people would notice, but my point is that's what a pressure level really is. It's dividing a range into smaller little units, okay? And at some point it just doesn't matter. You cannot perceive the difference, okay? So that's my analogy. I hope that made sense. Oh, I'm going to demo it for you. I want to. Yeah, I can prove this to you. I can show this to you. And every one of you should do this. I'm going to actually open up my tester, and I'm going to copy the link. And I just want you to get your tablets. And actually, I have to copy it from a different place. Hang on. Where is my tester? Okay, I want you to get your tablets, hopefully, or whatever device you're on. And I'm about to paste in the tester's link, okay? Open up the tester, okay? And once you do, just clear, it'll be empty. And it's set to all the right defaults. The range it depends on the specific pen, right? Some pen models just have a very wide pressure range. And that's why you want pens that have consistently wide pressure range, right? And different pens have different ranges. Pro Pen 3 is very consistently pretty high. Pro Pen 2, very consistently high. Wacom CP913, the Wacom 1 pen, it's pretty low. It can be varied from like 200 to 250, right? So it depends on the range, the specific pen, right? Okay, so just draw a stroke to make sure it works. Now, this stroke will look a little, it'll have little artifacts there. That's just because the way I'm not rendering it with a very beautiful brush stroke. So it's going to look a bit ugly just because of the way I coded it. But that's not what we're going to do, okay? We don't need to worry about that, okay? And you can press delete to the delete key to get rid of a drawing. We're going to click on advanced, and I want you to do this. It's called, under ADV pressure, advanced pressure, it says pressure quant. That means pressure quantization. So it's off, meaning it's not doing anything to the pen, okay? I want you to set it to 4. And let's take a look at what happens when I set it to 4. Ready? This is what it's like to draw with 4 pressure levels. Obviously, 4 isn't enough. I hope some of you are trying this. Okay? Oh, God darn it. Okay, sorry. We're going to do this again. I sent this to you in chat. And I want you to go click on advanced and change pressure quant to 4 and draw. Okay? Don't worry, we all know it's gonna feel bad. Okay, it's gonna look like this. Everyone should be clear now what happens with pressure levels. Okay? Clearly, we need more than 4. Right? Clearly. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna change the color to match the pressure as well. And you'll see, it'll just help you understand it even better. So change, let's see if that will, yeah. Change the color to the pressure instead of just black. Okay, now, not only is the size, but the color represents the pressure, where blue is low pressure and red is high pressure. Hi, sniping sideswipe, good to see you, good to see you. Okay, that was with 4 pressure levels. Now I'd like you to change pressure quantization to 8. And clear the canvas. Now watch. Okay, I think we all agree 8 is not enough. Unlike the popular 70s sitcom, which is called, with Dick Van Patten, which is called 8 is Enough. It was about a family with 8 children. 8 is enough. Okay, 8 is not enough. Try with 16 pressure levels. Okay, things are looking better, right? Both the size and the color determine the pressure levels. Stroke is looking a bit better. Yeah, actually, sniping sideswipe. What I found is with my PW550Ss, they're all pretty high. In fact, if you give me a moment, I will show it to you. Okay. What a good question. So this is a tool I wrote. Hang on, let me refresh this. The black is a reference pen, so ignore it. Let's take a look. I'll show it to you exactly. PW55S. This is a PW55S in orange, and then I have, I think, 3 PW55s, 550s, sorry. So one of them is just over 200, so a bit of an anomaly. The rest are crazy high, right? So they have, in general, they have pretty high max pressure, which is great, okay? So it's good to know that yours is measuring that high. So it is very typical. I can't guarantee that every PW550 pen is going to be like that, but so far, most people tell me they are experiencing that. Okay, where were we? Going back to tablet tester. Okay, so we were at 16. Now let's change the quantization to 32. When will I notice there's a difference? Looks better, but you can tell there's banding in color. The banding is less obvious with the stroke width, but it's there. Okay. I'm gonna just keep building this up until we are like, when will we stop noticing a difference? That is the question for us. This is, what is this? I'm at 64 now. It's getting, I mean, to be honest, at 64 pressure levels, it's not looking bad, right? You can see banding in color, but it's actually getting hard to see with a stroke. You can see it a little bit if you look. I guess they improved it on 2025, or I may be wrong. I think the PW550. Are you sorry? Could you clarify what you mean by on 2025? I just want to make sure what you mean. Okay, now at 128 pressure levels. Let's do it. Getting strokes looking pretty good, ain't it? Ain't it? Where did I get that country accent from? Interesting. Oh, I didn't get to max pressure. Let's try it out. Like, you can see the banding and the color, but by the way, the banding can also be caused by there's only like 120 reports per second, data points per second. And so you'll see banding just because of that, okay? Not even because of the... Let's just see. 256. So we will see banding even with more pressure levels, but 256 pressure levels is getting pretty good. The stroke looks super smooth, right? 1,000. Everyone's talking about 16,000. What about 1,000? Again, some of the banding you're seeing now is actually due to the fact that I'm getting 120 pen data points per second, which is not a lot. You need to have like 200 or 300, okay? And that's just the way the web APIs work. But stroke looks pretty good. Could you tell? Right? It's not working on your tablet, Ukero? Which tablet are you using? Maybe there's... or which browser would be another question. Okay, we're at 1,000. Now let's do 2,000, which is what I claim all you need. Oh, I mean they made the 3.0 pens more consistent in 2025. Okay, so all the pens I showed you, I purchased in 2024. Potentially even earlier, I don't know. But they were definitely not purchased in 2025, okay? So they all were 2024 pens. And they've all been pretty good. They've all been pretty good. And I know they're 2024 because the first time I used the PW550 was last year. Because I did a video about it toward the end of last year. So definitely not 2025. Yeah, it's probably the browser. Try it if you have Chrome, maybe try it. Okay, oops, I forgot to change this. Okay. I refreshed. I want to scale this by pressure, and I want quantization by 2000 pressure level, 2048. And let's see, what do we got? You tell me. Okay. Looks good, folks. Looks good to me. Now the question is, so I'm going to leave that up there for a second. I'm going to just go to 8,000. You know where the story's going. Here's 8,000. Oh my, look at that banding. Why is banding? Because the number of reports per second is only 120 per second. We will do it side by side, okay? This is 8,000. And this is 2,000. Now, can any of you fairly tell me that you're absolutely certain that that you had to have 8,000? The tester uses WinInk. Yes, Hera, that's correct. That's correct. This tester does. I have a Windows application which uses WinTab, which I am going to add these features to it because it also gives me more control over things. But this one's fun because you can also try the tool with me, right? So what I'd like you to do, so if you have especially those of you who have a 16,000 pen, you don't need to quantize it, just turn it off and it'll use the full pressure range. And let me do that. Let me just do the full pressure range without modifying the pressure at all. And you think, again, some of the banding is due to the report rate. But my point is, you don't need 8,000 pressure levels, okay? It does draw, but, oh, I see. That's what the browser you were using, right? So yeah, again, you don't need 8,000 pressure levels. You certainly don't need 16, okay? It is not going to help you. It is not going to help you. What you want is a pen with a wide pressure range. That will help you, okay? Oh, let's see. WinInk versus Microsoft Pen Protocol. I think you're asking me which one is better. Easy answer. Actually, let me make sure. You're talking about the Microsoft Pen Protocol that, let's say, the Surface pens use, right? Because this question is kind of comparing, it's kind of a weird question, actually, because you're comparing a little bit of an apple and an orange. Microsoft Pen Protocol is like how the pen is communicating to the device, and WinInk is a set of APIs that apps use to talk to the device. So it's not a versus, is what I'm saying. So maybe you can rephrase what you're trying to ask, and I'll... X5 Pro Pen will have... Yeah, it's going to happen. It is going to happen. And because people love pressure level numbers. They can't get enough of pressure level numbers, right? And you realize it's just nonsense. I shouldn't say that. Like, I get why they emphasize it, but there's no point. It would be like if Honda advertised, oh, we can give you a million different speeds. And you're like, you mean you can go a million miles an hour? And they're like, no, we mean you can go a million different speeds between 0 and 150 miles an hour. And then next day someone will say, well, we can do 2 million. And the way they do that is they just change their speedometer to show you an extra unit. Did it help you in any way? No. It doesn't change anything. So that's what I'm trying to get at. You don't need that many pressure levels. Very cool tool, though. I'm like 1 hour from my usual bedtime. So, hey, thank you for joining us, Carrie. It was really great. Your questions were very, very helpful in moving me along and helping me explore things, right? Very, very appreciated. Okay, I really should do this test, this live demonstration. I should make an actual video showing, like, this just doesn't mean anything. Sorry, okay. Sniping sideswipe. Love the username, by the way. I meant Windows Ink versus WinTab. This is a complex topic. First of all, I'll be honest with you. I prefer WinTab. Because even Wacom says it's better. Okay. It's also easier to program against, honestly. The second thing is that Windows Ink is, what's the right word for this? There's actually no API called Windows Ink. If you search in the Windows SDKs, you will not find an API for pen input that's called Windows Ink. There's no such thing. Windows Ink is a name given to the approach of using the standard Windows APIs to talk to the pen. Okay? Next level of complication. So I've already told you no API is called Windows Ink in Windows, which is weird. Okay? But it is the truth. If anyone can prove there's an API called that, let me know. Informally, it might be called that, but there's no official API called Windows Ink. It means use Windows APIs to communicate to the pen. Okay? Here's the next catch. There are like 3 different API choices on how to talk to the pen. Okay? And one of the ways to talk Windows Ink, like the old way, I think only has 1,000 pressure levels. And then some of them support an arbitrary number, meaning they don't know, they just report it as a floating point number or something. So depending on how your app, a bunch of apps can say they're talking Windows Ink, but they can use different variants of those different APIs, and you get very inconsistent behavior. Okay. On top of that, I have to admit Windows Ink causes the Windows Ink other APIs and behaviors and features in Windows cause weird things to happen with pens, right? I prefer WinTab, and if there's a problem with it, then I switch to Windows Ink. These days, I tend to start with Windows Ink and then only go back to WinTab if there's a problem. But for a long time, I was WinTab only. You're starting to see a lot of apps that only work with Windows Ink. They just don't. OneNote, I think, is like that. It will not work with WinTab. I believe they changed that sometime. They changed into supporting only Windows Ink some time ago. Hera, it was really, really nice having you again with us on the stream. So thanks for joining us and have a great lunch. Okay. Wow, that was a fun stream. And I think we covered a lot about pressure. I'm going to hang on for a little bit in case people have more questions. But other than that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Now, this stream started I started on time, but I had some setup issues. So it took me like an hour to get through the setup issues. So lesson learned number 1, I'm going to, as soon as I hit publish, I'm going to edit out that first hour. So people don't have to sit through me just kind of figuring out what's going on with the machines. Okay. Whew, okay. I'll wait here for just a few minutes while people have any remaining questions. How long did we go today? 3 hours, 40 minutes. So not my longest stream, but a pretty long one. This is really good for me. It gave me some thoughts about how to explain this in a real video. I will do a real video on this. And oddly enough, I may be streaming a little bit later tonight on some unrelated topics. So if anyone's around later, you can join me then, if I stream. Okay, I think that's it. I don't see any more questions. If there are, I'll tell you what, I will commit to streaming later tonight for those of you who are still awake, and then you can ask me questions. Then I will cover some news and updates, whatnot, just general issues and topics. Until then, everyone, I love you all. Stay perfect. And I'll see you all soon.